All right. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to Plug and Play's second Postal Service Innovation Day. We're super excited to have all of you on board. You guys are in store for a real treat. We've got some amazing speakers, technology, and panelists coming your way. The technology focus for this event is going to be surrounding plant automation and robotics solutions for the postal sector. As most of you know, the needs for these technologies has only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're looking forward to some valuable insight from the top minds within this space. But first, before we get into it, my name is Dakota Wensley. I'll be your MC today. I'm a partnerships manager here at Plug and Play Supply Chain. A big part of my role is fostering relationships within our ecosystem. It's been an absolute privilege to see what can happen when you pair some of the brightest minds in the world across different demographics, industries, and companies in the common pursuit of open innovation. So on the topic of bright minds, let me run through the agenda real quick. First up, we have opening remarks with Greg Kessman. He's the director of our Northwest Arkansas program at Plug and Play Supply Chain. Following that, we'll hear from Charles Brewer, COO at Canada Post, followed by a quick Q&A. Once that concludes, we'll be diving into the startup pitches featuring Dexterity, Covariant AI, Slip Robotics, and plus One Robotics. This will be followed by Q&A with one of the all-time greats, Elmer Toime. And then once that wraps up, we'll hear from our panelists from Swiss Post, Japan Post, DHL, and Saudi Post. And then we'll conclude with closing remarks. So with that, I'll open up the floor to you, Greg. Great to see you.
Great. Hey, thank you, Cody. And great to see you too. And thank you for that introduction. So I'm going to provide a brief overview of Plug and Play for those of you who are new to the platform. And then after that, I'll turn it back over to Cody. So, basically Plug and Play's goal through our innovation platform is to bring technology to market faster. And we do this through three areas. Our first area is our startup accelerator, and we run over 50 accelerator programs each year. And the goal is to introduce startups to our corporate partners through these accelerator programs and turn these introductions into technology pilots that would lead to implementations with our partners. We have 4 great startups that were part of our accelerator program presented today on automation and robotics. Our next area that we organize around is corporate innovation. And this is where we partner with companies like the Postal Services companies. And we look to help you with anything from advancing your innovation program internally, as well as introducing you to startups that can meet uniquely your technology needs. And we've been very successful in these introductions leading to pilots, implementations that have really helped out our corporate partners. And then finally, we have our venture capital wing, and we're a very active VC. Last year, we were one of the most active VCs in the country, and we continue to look for opportunities mainly in supply chain tech. So if we look at how we organize ourselves around technology areas, we focus on several different areas, as you can see on the slide. And we call these industry verticals. So much of what we do for our postal services partners is supported out of the supply chain vertical. However, we can work with other verticals such as brand and retail, energy, IoT, enterprise tech, or mobility to bring unique solutions to our postal partners. This breadth of industry coverage allows Plug and Play to find unique solutions to meet our partners' innovation needs. We also have a global footprint, and we span through several offices across the globe. This allows us to focus on where and source startups from where technology innovation is happening. It also allows us to focus our innovation with our corporate partners closely to their headquarters. So you can see the yellow dots on the slide are supply chain offices. So we have supply chain offices in Silicon Valley, Northwest Arkansas, Toronto, Hamburg, and a couple in Asia. If you look at the view of who we have as supply chain partners, so we have 40 plus partners, and when we created this program, we wanted to create an end-to-end program from sourced all the way out to consumer and customer. So you can see we have partners from mining all the way out to the retailers, and in between are manufacturers and CPGs. Additionally, we have many logistics companies that connect all of these partners together. So we have many logistics providers in all modes of transportation. So you look at maritime, rail, trucking, all the way out to 3PLs and postal services. And then when we work with these partners closely on their technology needs, we hear of these main areas that they're focused on right now. A lot of these areas have accelerated due to the recent pandemic and the shift to e-commerce. So you can see one of the needs and continuing needs is environmental sustainability. And this is mainly due to the commitments a lot of these organizations have made to reduce their carbon footprint over the next several years. Some of these organizations have made a significant commitment to go to carbon neutral in the next 10 to 20 years. So we see that as an increasing need for our partners. But most notably and obviously, last mile support and automation is very important right now. And when I think of the postal services, I think of them as the original last mile delivery organization. You were doing last mile delivery before we even called it that. And many of the postal services still provide an unmatched reliability and on-time performance in this area. So and we can continue to help you meet these needs by providing more services and solutions and automation and support. So that's what I had for the plug and play overview. Feel free to reach out to anyone on the plug and play team, and I'll turn it back over to you, Cody.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. Next up, we are privileged to welcome the COO of Canada Post, Charles Brewer. Charles is a true global citizen, having worked in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and of course the Americas. He's the former CEO of DHL e-commerce and has a noteworthy history of leading and founding companies. Again, there will be a quick Q&A after he speaks, so please feel free to write any questions you have in the Q&A box. Charles, we couldn't be more excited to have you on board.
Thank you, Dakota. What a very pleasant introduction. I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. So I think the idea is I'm going to try and share my screen. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I got that right.
Yes.
Right, okay. Let me go here. Right, so I'll say good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are on the planet and watching this from, and absolutely delighted to be here. And just before I get going, I thought, sort of a bit of an introduction myself, but also a bit of an introduction to how I became involved with Plug and Play. So
Hey, Charles, it appears that you're frozen. Are you able to hear me? There you are. Okay. I think you're on mute.
Hey, sorry, am I back now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, let's try that again. That didn't work very well. No worries. Technology.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go again. Right, can you see that, Dakota?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's try again. So yeah, like I was saying, I've been around sort of logistics 35 years and had the opportunity through DHL to meet Plug and Play. And again, not to sell it on their behalf, because I think they do a better job than I, but to the points that Greg was making earlier, for sort of traditional logistics operators like Canada Post and even DHL and many others besides, the opportunity to access cutting edge, innovative ideas focused on some of the challenges and opportunities that we face, I think is outstanding. And my first introduction to Plug and Play was coming across to your head office and spent a day or so there listening to startups tell us about some of the things they were doing. And there were three massive benefits. One was it hugely advanced my awareness of just how much was going on out there. Secondly, we found some fantastic opportunities for DHL to tap into. And thirdly, it made me think that as innovative as we think we are sometimes, we're not as innovative as startups. And this thing moves at a real pace. So, really super delighted for Canada Post to be involved with Plug and Play. Really super delighted to be here today to talk to you. I thought I'd just spend 5 or 10 minutes to give you a bit of an update And to Greg's comments earlier around the importance of logistics, if you weren't sure it was important before, COVID-19 has clearly led us all to the path of seeing that it really is. So I just want to take you through a bit of our journey. So like most people, we didn't really see that coming. If somebody had said to me that, I'd be wandering around Ottawa with rolls of toilet roll, I would have been probably not believed you. I'm still not fully aware or understanding why that's so essential. But anyway, similarly, I chose to fly to Vancouver just before COVID really started to take off and watch Rugby 7. So on the one hand, I was standing in a stadium with 51,000 other people drinking beers and watching rugby, one of my favorite pastimes, both actually. And on the other hand, I then got on a plane coming back from Singapore, and I was the only passenger a few days later. So, COVID-19, like for many operators, really caught everybody by surprise. When we think about, for those who are on the call who are perhaps not so acutely familiar with the industry, if you think about peak, which is when for postal operators and logistics operators, we deal with the highest volumes, e-commerce volumes through the year. We plan for that sort of a year in advance. With COVID-19, we had about 2 or 3 days. But to the point, straight after that visit to Vancouver, the very first meeting we had, we talked about what are the 3 guiding principles, and we said, number one, it's all about safety of our people, and not knowing what we know now, of course. But we said, make it safe, make it home. Our sort of marching orders around health and safety would be right at the forefront. So we weren't going to do anything that would contradict the health and safety of our employees. Secondly, we wouldn't do anything to contradict the health and safety of our customers. And if you think about some of the, what that means going forward is, the evolution or revolution of PUDO, which is pick up and delivery opportunities in terms of how customers can deliver or have delivered packets and parcels or return packet and parcels. That physical contact and that requirement for physical contact has changed significantly. So all of these sort of guiding principles have all sorts of implications around how you operate as business. And then the third one, which is we would deliver. And I think, I was talking about this on a conference earlier this week, that one of the, there are positives that come out of COVID-19 and there are of course negatives, but one of the positives, as I think sellers and consumers it allowed them to really rationalize and realize the essential nature of logistics, whether it be postal or traditional 3PLs or whoever. The ability for us to connect humans country to country or within country is why we exist. And I'll talk about it later on, but some of the memories I'll have at some point in the future, when hopefully COVID-19 is a distant memory, will be around how we behaved, our people behaved through that. To the point, again, I think like many companies, we went through sort of 3 stages. So chaos was sort of stage 1. Every single day, every single discussion was brand new. How do we do this? What do we do about that? How do we protect our employee? How do we deliver? How do we get a signature? So everything we were dealing with was completely brand new, and there was a fair amount of chaos. I'm sure it was true for many others as we sort of went through those early weeks of COVID-19. Then there is sort of that middle period, which we passed probably in May and June, where you've started to adjust to the situation. And certainly across our 60,000 employees, you could palpably feel this adjustment across the organization as people started to become, in inverted commas, more comfortable with the situation. And maybe even a little bit of complacency appears around that stage too, which I think with the second wave happening in most countries has probably gone away very quickly. And then the third one is operate. How do you operate? And again, I know everybody hates that saying now, new normal. And we're really in that third quadrant, that third segment now. Quadrant would be a wrong statement. Third segment now, which is how do we focus and operate and build the right capacity, the right processes, the right procedures to adapt and perform in the new normal. And the chart on the left, as you can see here, so this is produced by a chap who used to work for the Universal Postal Union, which is a great guy. He's produced many charts for many different postal operators. The grayish blue bar on the left is the volumes we saw coming through COVID-19, and you can see, middle of May, the spike, and it's sort of come down a bit, but it's still 40% up year on year. The white is last year through to the most current date. And you can see that at the height of COVID, the grey blue bar, we did more volume than we did in our peak period in 2019. And in fact, at the height of COVID, on one particular Monday, we delivered the volume that we had forecasted to deliver in 2029. So we had huge increase in volume. And on the right-hand side, we also had some different shape and sizes of orders than what we would normally traditionally see go through our system. And the infrastructure clearly neither could cope with the volume, nor could it cope with the size and shape of what was coming through. So what you see here is a kayak. We also had barbecues. We had a tree that was sent through Canada Post, all sorts of weird and wonderful things that people were ordering online. So a really huge challenge. In terms of what does that mean as we look forward, I think it's going to accelerate. Mail, for all postal operators was declining anyway. And I think we're going to see an acceleration of decline in mail. So I was just talking about it on a call before this, that companies who are already on a tipping point in terms of whether they should maintain physical paper and advertising or credit card statements or whatever it may be, have found digital ways to deliver those items. And I think some of that will stick. So I think we're going to see an accelerated decline in mail, but conversely, we've seen equally a hugely accelerating, and we'll continue to see a hugely accelerating parcel and packet scenario. So it really has changed the landscape for all postal operators and indeed all carriers. So what have we learned through COVID-19? So number one is be fast. And, as I mentioned earlier on, health and safety has to be at the center of what we do. And it will be at the center of what we do going forward, no change. As we build out for the new normal and adjust to the new normal, whether it be demand planning or capacity management, that health and safety message will stay right at the center of what we do, no change whatsoever. I think you've got to look also at building the right capacity. We talk about a lot of that at the moment. So initially in that chaos stage, it was just fine capacity, whether it be off-site locations, more vehicles, more people, whatever it may be. But not every parcel is a good parcel. So it's building the right capacity for the right customers and the right products that your business is focused on. And so for us, that's led us to the third point, which is take tough calls. And we're seeing that across the logistics sector, where demand is far greater than available capacity, whether that be international or domestic. And so companies are making the tough calls, and rightly so, sadly so for some, but it's the right thing to do. So I mentioned this earlier on. Some of the things that I will remember on the other side of COVID-19 is that our people are amazing. We have an amazing brand in Canada Post. We have 60,000 amazing people. And what I saw through COVID-19 in terms of how they've come together and still today come together to keep Canadians connected is something that will live long in my memory for many a time. We had cavalcades of frontline responders going past our facilities, our people going past hospitals, tooting their horns and thanking each other for doing what they were doing. And I remember that for a long time. To the point of today's call, innovate and invest ahead of the curve. I think COVID-19 has given all of us a bit of a shake, that those plans, those very nice detailed plans that we had out for 9 years' time, we might do a bit of robotics or whatever it may be, or dabble in this area, has really accelerated our need to get ahead of the curve from an innovation perspective. So great for your customers and great for us. Customer demand is relentless. They are somewhat forgiving with the situation, but they all want more capacity. So I think it's unlikely to change. The customer demand is pretty continuous throughout these types of situations. And as I mentioned earlier on, you need to make sure you make the tough decisions and take them early. That's it. Dakota, I'll stop there. I'll try and keep it short. I want to again thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope you have a great day and a great meeting. And that's it. I'll take any questions you may want to take.
Excellent, Charles. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Yeah, first question I see here is, So going forward, you mentioned sort of that we're at the adjustment phase. What do you see now as the most pressing challenge amidst this pandemic?
I think, I mean, there are lots. There's a long laundry list of things that people are working on and working hard on. And if we go back to Greg's chart, I could almost fill in on each of those boxes things that we're working hard and fast, from autonomous vehicles through to automation, through to robotics, through to health and safety, training. You know, I remember when I came to Plug and Play a couple of years ago, I remember one of the companies we actually worked with was a company that had developed virtual training for people to walk around facilities virtually rather than having to visit there. Well, 2 years ago, that was a nice to have. Today, it's a must have. So I think the landscape's changed, just unbelievably. And therefore, there's such huge upside and opportunity for new companies, new ideas, new initiatives, anything that ticks any of those boxes. But I would suggest, to answer your question, probably the most pressing is about making sure we clearly understand what the demand looks like and the right demand, and then matching that to the right capacity. That's probably the most pressing right now.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question I see here is, how are you handling new revenue models or operational efficiencies?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of comments there. One is that, as I mentioned earlier, COVID-19 has been challenging and for the most part negative for most people, but there are some upsides. And clearly the big revenue upside or opportunity is that it's stimulating huge growth in both domestic and cross-border online shopping. So, one of the statistics that I think is a good evidence of that is pre-COVID globally around 13%, 13% of what was bought is bought online. So 13% of everything bought was bought online. Today it's more like 20. And there's a great Harvard Business Review a few years ago that said for any sort of new product that 20% is kind of the tipping point where you see acceleration. So again, I was asked recently, do I think the new normal of e-commerce online shopping will stick? I think the answer is yes. A lot of new online shoppers, a lot of new categories, all of that equals incremental parcels and packets. To your second question, the key bit for postal operators is how to accommodate that incremental demand, but do so in a sustainable way. Sustainable, whether it be green, sustainable, whether it be financial, sustainable, whether it be health and safety. It's doing those things correctly. Yeah.
All right. And another question, are you using any tracking technology for your high value asset delivery, like RFID or BLE?
We have, and RFID is in play in certain places, but not en masse, no. So for generally speaking, we're still using track and scan, normal approaches, yeah.
I see. Okay, and another one we've got here is, due to increase in parcel handling, how do Canada Post strategy, or what is Canada Post strategy to capture the dimensions of irregular shaped items quickly and accurately?
Yeah, so we use, again, it's like most logistics operators in the lower volume areas, we use physical measure sticks, etc., to measure packages. But for our plants, which most of our volume goes through the plants, we use technology developed digital solutions to scan packets and parcels to make sure we get the right DIMs coming through.
All right. And has COVID-19 contributed to the adoption of automation tools at Canada Post?
Yeah, I've been asked this question many times. So as I said earlier, and I think Ian Kerr may well be on the call. So Ian's my head of engineering. He spends his life in this domain. And, when we went 6 months ago or 7 months ago, we were talking about what are we going to do in 2023? What are we going to do in 25? What are we in 2027? Now we converted that to 813, 815, 8. So we just converted the years. It's just advanced everything, So over the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks or so in particular, Ian and his team have been working really hard to identify how we can do three things. How can we get more out of our existing systems? So we already have a fantastic infrastructure, and there's opportunity within what we have to get better productivity and efficiency. Second one is, where do we need to add new four walls, so new buildings? And then the third one, of course, is where can we add technology, automation, robotics, etc. And all of that is married up to what we believe the demand forecast looks like for the next sort of 5-10 years, which is not an exact science, but it is a combination of maximizing what you get out of your existing infrastructure whilst also finding the right infrastructure for go forward that matches that demand here.
I see. Well, Charles, unfortunately, we are running out of time here. But I see a bunch of other questions for you in the chat box. If you'd like, we can keep you on and you can answer these questions with your camera off. Charles, couldn't be more grateful to have you on board.
You're welcome, Dakota. You take good care, yeah?
Bye, Charles. All right, so that brings us to the startup pitches. So first up, we've got the Vice President of Business Development at Dexterity, Mike Heislop. They develop automation solutions with a focus on robotic systems that have human-like dexterity. Mike, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you very much, Dakota. It's a pleasure to be here and welcome. So as you mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Dexterity. We are in Redwood City, California, which is near the San Francisco airport, and have approximately 70 employees. We could slide to the next slide, please. And so we deliver a full stack robotic automation solution. And so what that means is we encompass the entire hardware software stack, and you'll see in a bit what I mean by that. Next slide, please. And so our vision is to transform our customers' business, and specifically, we're going to talk today about induction and singulation technology in the postal industry. Next slide, please. And so this is a typical application that we might do when we mean full stack. So, all right, next step, we might have products sitting on pallets on a floor. And next step, we might introduce some degree of material handling for mobility. Next step, next slide, please. And then select the right robot. So maybe the robots are operating individually, maybe they're operating as a team of robots. Next. And so then the next step would be to give end of arm tooling, whether it's suction or gripper, depending on what they're picking. And then the next step would be give the cameras or give the robots vision so they can see for localization. And then the final step, next please, is software that dictates whether the robots operate individually, teams, or whatever they have to do. Next step, please. And so we have kind of a unique approach to getting to intelligent robotics. Next. And so what that means for us, the definition of intelligent robotics, if you think of a triangle, you might on the bottom left, you have the hardware companies that are good at robotics. They might be good at the grippers. And then the next on the bottom right, you might have you have the software guys. So you have AI, machine learning models, that sort of thing. And we do both those segments, but we add a third dimension, which is sense of touch. And you'll see why that's so important. So what I mean by sense of touch is putting very advanced sensing, smart sensing on the end effector. Next step, please. Next slide. And so let's just go quickly through a few the demo reels. So the high level thought, the profiles of the products are never built in. It's dynamically identifying the ideal grasp points for everything. And this is where sense of touch matters. The robot is picking things it's never seen before. And as soon as it picks it up, it knows how much it weighs, how much it swings when it accelerates it. And so it can get better at the job as it goes. So here it does a little push and tuck, and it's because of advanced sensing, it learned how to master that product. Why don't we move on to the next slide for the sake of brevity, please? And so let's talk specifically about our singulation offering. In other words, for the postal industry, singulation and induction. Next step, please. Next slide. And so some of the high level thoughts for if you're talking from a bulk pile and you're singulating on a sortation belt, our robots can pick around 2,000 picks per hour, which is about human rate for most of the industry. In other words, a fully automated system and also semi-automated system. We can do random picks from a bulk pile, and we can actually synchronize a team of robots to do the work. So let's see here. In other specific data points, 92. Oh, here, why don't we start the video? No, that's fine, Dakota. Let's go to the video. That's fine. I'll talk as it goes. We're in this. Is it working? Yeah, let's see here. Hit play on there. There we go. Okay. So we can do speeds of up to 2,000 picks per hour, and that's picks off a bulk up pile. And you can see you're doing the puts, if you will, directly under a sortation belt that's moving at 92 meters per minute. So that's about production speed. And we can handle a broad range of products. So here we're picking boxes, whether they're facing up, whether they're facing down. You have your two-dimensional parcels, you have bubble wrappers. So it's a very healthy parcel mix, what you might call in the industry smalls. And so the robot develops specific picking strategies, even for buried parcel. it develops unique strategies. So when I have a box, I pick it this way and I get better at it. If I have a poly bag, I get better by segmenting and picking this way. And it actually can handle external interference and then restart itself. It also can do barcode scanning with regard to any orientation, whether it's upside down on the sides. Here's an example of something that shouldn't have made it into the mix. And so it's a non-inductible, so it can alert the supervisor, or maybe it picks it and puts it into a hospital bag. And so also what it can do is if there's external interference, and let's say they're putting additional parcel in a slot where it doesn't belong, it can detect that due to its advanced sensing, and it could recognize to the supervisor that, hey, something's wrong here. And also if there's a power outage, it can do an automatic recovery without external interference. And also it can have fallback if you want to just roll it back and use it, and a human starts doing induction instead. And so here's an example of where we can get beyond 2,000 picks an hour. That's with 2 robots in one cell, and our software ensures that the robots do not collide. And so, all right, thank you. Now let's advance to the final slide, please. So why is Dexterity? Oh, I think there's one more slide, Dakota. Go back one. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So here's some high-level thoughts. Once again, 2,000 picks per hour, and that's off picking up a bulk pile with a very broad, everything from your small boxes, mid-sized boxes, bubble, 2-dimensional wrappers, poly bags, all that good stuff. That's fairly valuable to the industry, and that's both a fully automated and semi-automated. We can do barcode scanning with regard to any orientation. So if you consider a box has 6 sides, the barcode could be on any one of those sides. So we have advanced scanning that'll capture that for you. And also we can parcel type learning. So in other words, the very first time it picks it, it might take a very conservative view, but as the time goes, it gets much better and develops specific picking strategies. And then also it can model the parcel flow upstream to ensure that everything's done accurately. So thank you. Let's go to the last slide. And so really there's been kind of 3 waves of robotics in our opinion. It started with your assembly line robots in the early 80s. Then we went into mobility, and suddenly you had AMRs and you had drones and shopping carts. And we're part of the 3rd wave that handles true dexterity manipulation that's required in robotics to really close the gap. So thank you for your time, and hopefully. My name is Mike Hislop, once again, Dexterity.
Thank you, Mike. If anyone would like to get in touch with Dexterity, please just reach out to a Plug and Play representative. We'd be happy to facilitate that introduction. Just a reminder, we'll be having a Q&A after the last startup pitch. All right.
Thank you, Dakota.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so next up, we're pleased to introduce Ted Stinson, COO of Covariant AI. Covariant is building universal AI that allows robots to see, reason, and act on the world around them. Ted, the floor is yours.
Hey, Coda, can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great. Hi, everybody. Ted Stinson. I'm the COO at Covariant. So two simple ideas I want to leave you with in our time today. One is that there is the next wave of automation possibility is now here, and it's through robotics that are powered by AI. And 2, that this new type of robotics, this AI-enabled robotics, has some opportunities and some dimensions to it as a type of innovation that is different from other types of innovation you probably have encountered and dealt with in the past. And understanding that those properties of how you can get the most out of the innovation, this AI robotics innovation, is one of the key things that we'd love to help you figure out. So just maybe some quick context. So why don't we move forward to the next slide, please? So all of you as leaders on this call have driven extraordinary gains through traditional automation. Next slide, please. At the same time, walk into any of your facilities and you'll see some version of this. Tasks, both that require some meaningful degree of manual manipulation to be able to accommodate. Next slide, please. So why is that? If every package was the same shape, color, material, your facilities would look like automotive plants. They would have vast numbers of robots who are able to handle these sorts of tasks in an automated fashion. Instead, next slide, what you see is extraordinary next slide, please. Extraordinary variation. Next slide, please. Each package different, and ultimately traditional systems unable to deal with the automation. Next slide, please. One more, please. Great. So, the real world, in the real world, in your operations, the inherent variability, the infinite variability that's inherent in that operations, items folded over, obscured, crumpled, all those are fundamentally unlocked through a new type of system that's powered by AI, where the system can learn and adapt to the infinite complexity of your operations. Next slide, please. So it's in this context that Covariant was started 3 years ago. We're a Berkeley-based AI startup, AI software startup. We were founded by 4 of the world's leading AI researchers. And to this day, that remains the core of the DNA of the company. So roughly 1/3 of who we are today are researchers who have both pioneered the techniques that enable the types of systems that we're talking about, and also pushing forward the frontiers of research to unlock the next set of challenges. So what I want to do, next slide please, is just spend a couple minutes on showing you an actual system of a use case in operation. So this is a station that was built with our partner ABB. This is set up in their Auburn Hills Showcase Lab. So ABB, just as some background, they're one of our robotic automation partners. They selected us last year after an extensive benchmarking competition of 20 of the world's leading AI providers, and determined that the system we enabled them ultimately was able to handle the variability and the challenge of real-world operations. So a couple things I'd love to highlight about this system. One, it works out of the box. So no pre-training, no metadata. It learns from the experience of interacting with, in this case, parcels. 2, the system, it operates as part of a fleet. And so as this system learns and adapts to the objects that go through its operation, it's able to share those learnings with other robots, which in turn enables the complete fleet of your systems to learn and adapt together. 3, it is optimized for the complexities of a parcel environment. So earlier in this video, you saw it handle an odd-sized parcel and move that to an alternative place. This system operates at human equivalent performance, so roughly 2,000 pph with greater than 99% accuracy. Last slide, please. So there's a couple ways we can engage with you. One, we and along with our partners like ABB can work with you to deploy these systems today. They're ready to go. And 2, I'd say more fundamentally to the idea I shared earlier, we would be very interested in helping you think through the longer term potential of how these types of systems can add value and transform your environment. With that, I will say thank you and look forward to follow-up conversations.
Thank you so much, Ted. Yes, again, if you'd like to get connected to Covariant AI, please either reach out to them or to a plug-and-play rep. Coming up next, we've got the co-founder of Slip Robotics, Chris Smith. Slip Robotics is solving inefficiencies in short-haul logistics using a robot as a service business model. Great to have you, Chris.
Hey, thanks a lot. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Cool. So yeah, I'll kind of talk a little bit about what we're working on at Slip Robotics. We're really working on how to improve truck loading and unloading, especially in short haul logistics. So if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I'll give an example of how we're kind of currently looking at short haul logistics, and then I'll explain how this really applies to Post a little bit later on. So one of the things we're really addressing are frequent short haul truck routes between an origin and destination, right? So the example I always give is one from my past where we had a warehouse and a manufacturing plant that were about 5 minutes apart from each other. And we had a truck going between them about every 20 minutes to 30 minutes, right? And so it was a really frequent trip. And because of that, we had a truck that was getting loaded for 30 minutes, driving for 5 minutes, and then getting unloaded for another 30 minutes. If you go to the next slide, what this causes is really high OpEx costs. Like you guys see this in Post all the time too, with loading and unloading trucks with parcels. There's a lot of cost and time in that operation. Additionally, as we get more automated in warehouses and in facilities, we also get more automation on the road with trucking. There becomes this automation gap that will exist in the future in that interface between the two, and that's where we're really focusing our time at Slip Robotics. Go to the next slide. So how we solve this problem is with our truck loading and unloading robot. If you go to the next slide, our truck loading robot basically reduces the amount of time that it takes to load and unload a truck from half an hour, 45 minutes. If it's a palletized load, obviously with Postal it can be longer, and take that and reduce it down to about a 5-minute unload and load time. And I'll show you how we do that. So next slide. Basically, instead of directly going into the truck or going from sort directly into truck, we instead go into a staging lane that's where the robot is located. If you go to the next slide, we put pallets or parcel on the robot. At that point, the robot can either accept pallets, or it can also be wrapped or binned to allow for non-palletized loads. Right. So next slide. When the trailer or the truck arrives at the facility, the robots move into the truck. Next slide, and then next slide. And then once they're loaded, they drive with the truck to the destination. Next slide. And once at the destination, they are unloaded from the truck. And then next slide. So what this does, currently what we're seeing in kind of the other parts of logistics is that this really increases decreases the warehouse labor or the facility labor, because you no longer have somebody going in and out of the truck loading it. And then you also increase the driver utilization. So the driver is no longer waiting for that load and unload to occur, because you're basically loading the truck while the truck isn't there, right? And the next slide. This is a drop-in replacement for any of the current operations. There's no infrastructure requirements. We don't have to integrate with any systems, right? It's really a solution to load and unload a truck with a robotic solution that really can decrease that overall OpEx cost. Next slide. I'll skip some of the benefits for now. We can talk about those later if you're interested. Next slide. But I just wanted to kind of get my contact info out there. If you're interested in talking a little bit more, the places I really see this impacting Post is in between routes that are kind of really frequent and short haul routes. So anything from like bulk to sectional type facilities, or for sectional to local delivery facilities, where you have these really frequent truck routes that where loading and unloading can, in a shorter period of time, can decrease labor and also decrease lead time. But thanks a lot for the time, and I appreciate being able to talk to all of you.
Thanks so much, Chris. It was great to have you. All right, and our final startup will be One Robotics. One Robotics builds robot perception software and solutions. They mitigate the persistent shortage of manual labor and allow your personnel to flow from monotonous tasks to higher value work. With me, I have John Albano, the Director of AI Vision Sales. John, I'll pass it on to you.
All right, great. Thank you, Cody. Appreciate you having us. Going off some of the other things that have been said to this point, we're addressing a few different things in the market. So high level of variation when it comes to AI vision and robotics is a challenge out there, and that is something that we're addressing in the marketplace today, and we'll talk a little bit about some more specifics there. Secondly, I want to be clear about our product is a software-based product, which means we are completely hardware agnostic. So it gives us the flexibility to work with any integrator that is out there in the market, any robotic arm and gripper. And lastly, our mantra is robots work, people rule. So we'll talk a little bit more about how Yonder plays into that. But we are addressing both addressing the labor shortage that is out in the market, but also incorporating the labor that is already present at these facilities. So they are involved in the automation process. Next slide, please. So we are straight up an AI vision company. That is our DNA. That's what we do. You'll see the image here in the middle is a point cloud of an image that we are taking and applying pick points to those parcels that need to be picked. We are essentially identifying the coordinates of where those objects are and sending that back to the robot, and the robot controller is then taking that information and taking that coordinates and going and getting that package. To the right, you'll see a bounding box around some FedEx smalls there, and that is just an example of how we create an AI model for this function. Next slide, please. So I want to illustrate here in our project at FedEx is certainly a public project. It's been written up in the Wall Street Journal, and there's videos associated with it with the article itself. That is our Gen 3 solution, and the reason why we wanted to point that out is a couple of reasons. First off, it's been a very successful project for it, and we're of course very proud of it. But we've also moved on to Gen 4 and then Gen 5 going into 2021. So we've been at this for a while. We are getting better and better as time goes on. So we're of course getting and accomplishing better rates with our customers and our end users. Next slide, please. So a little bit how our technology works. And this is something that makes us unique and I believe special in the marketplace. So if you can think about this as a technology stack, the first part of it is a 2D scan and a 3D point cloud. And that gets us to about 80% of the way there in terms of accuracy and being able to see what we want to identify in terms of a pick point. At that point, we lay an AI vision model on top of that is specific to the group of parcels that we want to go ahead and pick. And that's going to get us into the high 90s, call it even maybe 99% accuracy. We believe there's always going to be a certain percentage or number of exceptions that will need to be addressed, and that's where Yonder comes in. So at that point, when an exception arises, and it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen, the robot has the ability to phone a friend. Which is a crew chief. It's a human being, and that's why we say robots work and people rule. And that Yonder call will go over a cloud-based system. Next slide, please. And the crew chief will see something like this. And you could see that green bounding box that's in the left-hand corner there. It's essentially going to show the crew chief this image and ask them, is that parcel okay to go pick? And if that's true and the crew chief agrees, they'll go click their mouse onto that green bounding box and the robot will go ahead and get that parcel. Now an average response or Yonder call and response by a crew chief is 4 to 6 seconds. So it's fast. It also goes on behind the scenes essentially. So the robot does not stop to pick in place while it's working or while Yonder is addressing this issue. So what does this do, or what's the value here? It essentially gets you to 100% accuracy out of the box. So when the AI model is just coming online, and it's possible that we would get more Yonder calls. As the AI model gets better and better, those calls can decrease. If a new population of product is introduced, so for around the holidays or something, packaging changes, the customer brings on a new customer in which they're going to get different packages and the AI model needs to train up, Yonder is always going to bridge that gap. Next slide, please. The other thing about Yonder is that we can give back analytics, okay? So in FedEx's case, or in MSC Direct's case, which is another customer that we have, which is a tooling distributor, they want to know how many Yonder calls were done that particular day. And they want to know analytics about each robotic arm in terms of how it performed. so they could make collective decisions or a good business decision based on their population of robots. Yonder also allows us to update and upgrade things remotely. And we could do that very effectively over a fleet of robots. So it's not just analytics, although analytics is a big portion of it, but it also allows us to support the customer very effectively. One last point about these analytics is that we use PAC-ML standards, which gives us the ability to collect 2,000 different data points. You probably wouldn't use that many, but it does give you flexibility to the organization to pick data that they would want to see. So typically organizations would pick about 8 to 10 data points, and then we would create a dashboard report for them. Slide. And this is our last slide, and Cody, I appreciate the time. This is our Customer Experience Center. We've done a very effective job of hosting our customers that have come down to see all of our technology. You may be able to see it, but this is in a horseshoe type design. So we walk people through and we're able to show them simulation, tote picking. You can see the robot up front is a tote to segment the tote. We have depalletization and a few other applications as well. So thank you very much for the time, Cody. I appreciate it. I don't know if we'll do Q&A right now, or I should stick around for that.
Yes. Pop up.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks so much, John.
Sure.
Okay, and that will wrap up the startup pitches for today. We are pleased to welcome Elmar Toime, Director of eToime Consulting Limited, who will be leading the Q&A portion. He's a senior advisor in the postal and logistics sector. He has held positions as Chief Executive of New Zealand Post, Executive Deputy Chairman of Royal Mail, Chairman of GLS, a major European parcels company, and a member of the Deutsche Post DHL Supervisory Board. He was a founder and investor in the Postia Group, a US tech company for smart parcel dimensioning. He is currently a non-executive director of Qatar Post and of Solutions Dynamics Limited. He lives in London, and he has received a Lifetime Achievement Award for leadership in the postal industry. Elmar, super glad to have you.
Thank you. It's really great to be here, and thank you for that sort of very broad introduction, Cody. Hello, everyone. Congratulations, really, to Plug and Play for bringing together this type of session, and really that allows everyone to see some of these very new things. And I have to say, first of all, that I'm speaking now with a postal hat on, so I am thinking about these innovations in the context of the postal sector. And as we heard from Charles Brewer early, the growth in e-commerce and parcels is really stretching how that industry how the post can handle that sector. I'm absolutely certain these projects in time and in the longer time frame will be relevant. And so my focus now is, the stages of implementation, and these are the sort of questions that I'd like to sort of put to the team. And perhaps I might just start with John from +1, because I must say I really like the sound of Yonder, because my test on handling is what happens when a coconut comes rolling down that parcel belt. Because I once went into a parcel centre and saw a coconut there with a label on it and so on. I think Yonder would very quickly call their sort of human representative and get an answer. My question, though, is just thinking about the business case and the business model. What is your business model there, John, and how do you see it moving into that sort of postal environment? You talk about, being not hardware agnostic. When do you come into the picture? Do you come in when the operator is thinking about installing and putting robotics in, or are you there before or after? Or what is your business model, and how would it interact with the post?
It's a great question. I would say sometimes all of the above, but the majority of the time we are there before, talking about AI vision technology, how it works, how it's to be positioned within the solution itself. So in many senses, we start that conversation, but we are certainly a software company. So we get to a certain point with the customer, we are certainly engaging the appropriate integrator and or robotic arm manufacturer to round out the rest of the solution.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
If I can just go on in a similar theme, perhaps turn to Mike from Dexterity. Just thinking, what prompted you to think about moving into the mixed parcel induction? Are you working that anywhere currently in a sort of sector? And I'm really interested in how clients measure the cost benefit. How do they make the investment, and then how do they think about the investment in terms of their benefits and the timeframes they expect?
Thank you for those questions. And yes, the first question is in regards to parcel, and that just reflects into reality. In other words, when you look at the big global parcel guys, Express Parcel, what have you, when they start talking about the terminology when they're dealing with smalls, it's everything from small boxes to two-dimensional envelopes to poly bags. So in other words, all that is tossed down a chute. And this is, like I said, this happens globally. And so then pretty much I've been to a lot of facilities. In the dungeon of the facility, the chutes go, and then there's going to be an individual there picking from that bulk pile and creating each as a singulating onto the sortation belt. And so that's why we had to develop a solution that would accepted what was going on the ground. So in other words, so that's where we came up with that solution. And then as far as economics are concerned, the numbers are the numbers. In other words, this isn't really so much about replacing humans because it's just void of humans. In other words, this is very difficult, tedious work, and monotonous. And so these same postal carriers are having an extremely hard time finding people to do these jobs. And so we try to fill that void.
Yeah. Yes, it depends on the economy. So I think that part is about right. And certainly there's a difficulty with this capacity overloading in sort of getting people, no doubt about that. In your sort of cover notes, you use the term easy to deploy. What does that mean in the context of a general manager thinking about this as opposed to a technical specialist that understands exactly what you're doing? Mike?
Oh, was this for Mike, for me?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Well, in other words, what we promote is that we do little in the way of site modifications. In other words, if you talk about an induction cell and you have a work envelope, in other words, the worker was reaching a meter in this direction and perhaps a meter and a half in another direction. So we get basic context and we try to provide a solution that works within that existing envelope with little in the way of site modifications. Because when you talk about your average express parcel facility, it might be running 24/7, 365, and they just can't shut down. So they got to have a drop-in solution. So in other words, I'm not going to try to say that this is a matter of hours or days. I mean, an installation can take a couple weeks, but the key factor is to be able to work within the existing envelope and do little in the way of site modifications.
Yeah. No, that'd be right. No, thanks, Mike. Perhaps move to Chris in Slip Robotics. I understood, I'm thinking now about the postal sector, and the short haul distances are smaller loads, so to speak, and the long haul distances where the big loads go. So though you seem to emphasize short haul, I guess moving from one distribution center to another one, which might be,
Sorry, I lost you there at the end.
Did you get it?
And moving from one distribution center to another, and then it froze for a second.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking you're sort of emphasizing short haul, whereas in short haul in the post, it's lesser quantities, so that yeah, the tray wouldn't be needed as much.
Yeah, so yeah, we are specifically focused on short haul, and the reason for that is we use what we're calling a captive robot, right? The robot goes with the truck. So it makes more sense in post in places like, I call it like near last mile, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like from your local delivery center to the door of your customer, but it's right before that, right? Between that last kind of sortation facility and your local delivery center. Those are routes that happen at a very frequent pace, are usually relatively short. And we feel like we can make a really big impact in that space because we can decrease the lead times, because we now have, we can load a truck while it's not even there. You can think of our solution as a cartridge for the truck, right? It's a capability to basically load that truck while it's not there, and then when it gets there, to get all that material into the truck in less than 5 minutes. So that's
what's the height limit? The height limit on terms of what you can put on your.
So we can rack the whole thing. So so basically we can fill the truck to cube it out, and that's one of the other advantages. Like traditionally, it's hard to get the cube filled in a truck, but with our solution, because it can be a rack, it can be bins that are super tall. We can really have a lot of flexibility in being able to fill the cube of a trailer.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. Ted, again, pretty clever stuff. I was just thinking about the dependence on hardware, and in its way, it's a question for everybody. The system has to look, it has to see, and we heard how adjustments can be made, but sort of a lot of my experience with light sensitive dimensioning, it doesn't work in every light frame. So for instance, what happens outdoors is different from what happens inside. How sensitive are things on lighting conditions? Is that a critical part of the installation?
I wouldn't call it a critical part. It's an enabling piece of the hardware system that we and our partners typically design in. I'd say to step back and maybe say, well, what are the critical parts? In our view, this is ultimately, it's about the intelligence of the system, the ability to adapt to the almost infinite variability that you see if you look at a typical parcel mix that comes through a facility. And it's that ability to adapt to that change over time, and do so in a way where it scales as you deploy more systems across the operation.
Yeah. And how do you see your solution distinguishing itself? How is it different?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting just watching some of the fellow panelists present today. I can appreciate if you're in the audience, it may be hard to tell difference sometimes. And maybe in that, I guess I would say, fundamentally, my advice is ultimately the ability to tell difference comes in seeing these systems through extended testing operations. And so for example, we recently went through a process with a pretty sophisticated fellow parcel organization, not currently on the call today, where as part of this process, they asked the companies who were going to participate in submitting to this RFP to respond with 30-minute plus videos. I think this is a great example of the challenge that I think you all face, which is how do you really tell the difference? Really short clips are easy to, anybody can do that. It's really in seeing the extended operation that you get to understand, am I getting a system that will operate autonomously in my operations? And so one bit of advice for folks is, as you design your RFP processes, ask for really extended, long-running understanding of how your system performs. And it's in that they'll begin to see a lot of the difference.
Great, thank you. I think we could go on forever on questions, but there might be others from other people. Or I've certainly done my set here, so we can sort of move on with the session.
All right, excellent, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming on board. Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on to the panel. But again, couldn't be more grateful to have all of you on board. All right. So up next, I'd like to introduce our very own Mike Zalance. He is the founder of the Supply Chain and Logistics program here at Plug and Play, who will be moderating the panel. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Dakota, and thank you everyone for joining again for our Postal Innovation Day. This is our second one this year, and the last one was super successful, which inspired us to do another one. I'm super excited about this panel. We have representatives from all over the world representing some of the most well-known postal services in the world. So let's just jump right into it. I'll move, starting with Nabil Malouli. He's the Vice President of Global E-Commerce at DHL. It's incredible to have DHL on the line as obviously one of the largest or the largest logistics company in the world, not to mention a postal service in their own right. So Nabil, if you could please introduce yourself for maybe a minute or two and the things you're working on. You obviously have a very important role today at DHL.
Hey Mike, hi everybody. A pleasure to be here. Thank you for the Plug and Play team for organizing such a great event. Well, my name is Nabil Malouli. I'm based in the US. I've been working for DHL in different roles for the last 12 years. I lead today the global e-commerce strategy and go-to-market for DHL Supply Chain, which is one of the divisions of the DP DHL group. My focus is primarily on developing solutions and new capabilities for any company basically selling products online or selling through multiple channels. And what we do is basically anything that happened after that buy button is clicked by a consumer, everything that happened in the physical world, receiving orders, all the fulfillment activities, all the last mile deliveries, returns. So we're working with like all the strategic partnerships, development of new technology, and basically to build the best a ecosystem and platform for primarily for Fortune 200 companies that are either already deep in e-commerce or that are growing in e-commerce, and we serve all type of profiles. So pleasure to be here, and I'm also a long time friend of the Plug and Play organization. So thank you for having me.
Nabil, it's always great to connect with you and the DHL team. It's been a great long-term partnership with you guys. So I'm just going to move from right to left because we started with Nabil and go through the representatives. And next I'll do another long-term Plug and Play partner. I think Swiss Post is actually one of our longest standing partners at Plug and Play. So Andrea, it's incredible some of the success we've had with you guys over the years. And you guys are obviously recognized as one of the most innovative postal services globally. So it's an honor to have you. And we'd love to hear more about your role as the head of autonomous delivery and various other things at Swiss Post.
Thank you very much. So today I will focus on the autonomous delivery part. So I'm responsible for this autonomous delivery program at Swiss Post. And what we do there is really having a look into all sorts of new technologies which are emerging within these sectors. So this means having autonomous vehicles on ground, but also in the air. Let's say let's have the classical one. So the drones we have running, but also of course delivery robots which are on the ground, indoors as also outdoors. And the goal really is to get an understanding of how far are these technologies, how could we make business out of it, and how can we integrate those things into our processes at Swiss Post.
Sounds great. Thanks, Andrea. Okay, next let's move to Ando-san, who's actually moved, where his organization has moved a whole team from Japan to engage with us at Plug and Play. And Ando-san is still here in Silicon Valley as a great representative of our community. So it's an honor to have you as the second time on our Postal Innovation panel. So please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Yuichi Ando, and I head up Silicon Valley innovation efforts for Japan Post. And we are kind of a conglomerate now. started with Postal Service and Logistics, and we actually do have a financial arms, owning the largest retail bank in Japan and insurance subsidiary as well. But we are primarily looking at the logistic related technology based in Silicon Valley. And at the headquarters, we started a robust innovation program in 2017. And 2018, we became the partner for the plug and play supply chain logistics. And we started to have a deal flow with plug and play guys and startups in their ecosystem. And 2019, we opened up a Silicon Valley office with a three people innovation team. And I think, you know, the influence to the whole organization has been phenomenal. And we are facing, you know, the population aging issues and a little bit of a stretch in terms of finding the work labor resource. And it's very tight even before the COVID, and you know, under the Corona for the past 6-7 months, our operation has been very stretched, and it's actually giving us a good you know, a review of how we can streamline the operation much better. So it's an honor to be joining this panel today, and thanks for Plug and Play and Mike.
Thanks, Ando-san. Pleasure to have you again. So our next panelist, we got to know recently, but I know he has big ambitions within Saudi Post. He's the Deputy CEO, so it's a real honor to have you on the panel, Dr. Fadi. If you could please introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Mike, first and foremost, thank you very much for the invitation, and a big thanks to the Plug and Play team for organizing this event. It's a pleasure to be with my fellow panelists, esteemed panelists this evening, and a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to wherever you are in the world. As Mike mentioned, I'm the Deputy CEO of Saudi Post, and that's the national postal courier service provider within the country. The first government organization ever established across the kingdom here, and we're basically responsible for you know, taking care and ensuring that the postal services across the nation are up and running and providing our citizens and residents across the country with the most viable solution and service. As I said, we've been around for a number of decades. I think traditionally the focus obviously has been on postal service. And as we have seen across the globe over the past decades, that's going through a decline, and the whole industry is changing and reshaping with e-commerce booming. So we're actually undergoing a huge transformation. As part of the transformation of the country, as part of Vision 2030, that's being led by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. And there's really a lot going on, but I look forward to the conversation, and I'll share a little bit more about that later. But just in terms of the size of the organization and some stats there for those of you that aren't familiar with Saudi Post, we're at 8,700 plus organization today in terms of number of employees. We have about 550 retail locations scattered across the kingdom, rural, main cities, metropolitan cities, suburbs, etc. And I'll give you a little bit more about that later on in the session. But back to you, Mike. Thank you very much.
Sounds great. Thanks, Fadi. Looking forward to it. Okay, so let's just jump right into the kind of the main topic for today's panel. And the big theme you guys saw today was kind of plant automation and robotics. And I'm sure across the world has changed dramatically with COVID-19, and the importance of postal services and also the need for automation and robotics across the whole supply chain has increased. So I'd love to hear your individual perspectives on the opportunities for working with startups for automation across different modes in the supply chain. I know, Nabil, you have some interesting insights for what you guys are doing within the building. So I would love to hear kind of what you guys are working on or some good use cases with startups and technology you have.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. So I think when we look at this year, I mean, one thing that has been very clear is that we have seen the supply chain and logistic industry really taking a step in terms of importance in most of the organizations as one area which is not anymore just an operational function or support functions, but really becoming a competitive advantage. And with the growth of e-commerce, this is just being enhanced. If we look at our roadmap and the projects we were working on pre-COVID and post-COVID, I would not say that we are seeing a change. What we are seeing is a significant acceleration on the interest around new technology, and also not only the interest, but also the execution of organizations that are really now saying, well, you know, we've been talking about this, now we really have to do something different. So I think we are seeing really an acceleration of the execution piece. We last year announced that we are going to invest $2.2 billion US dollars into our digitalization and robotic agenda within the 2025 strategy of the group. And I think we are saying that now it might be a bigger number. But that strategy was really around developing new capabilities, strengthening partnerships with organizations that are best in class in the different areas of the business. And when we look at the way we are looking at optimization within the buildings and the type of technologies, we've divided this into 12 categories of business. So, you know, assisted picking robots, wearable devices, goods to person robotics, unloading and loading automation. So we have these 12 categories of business, and within each one of the categories, we look then at who are the right partners and what are the best companies to work with. And in this context, you find different organizations that will be, you know, best in class maybe in AGV or in, you know, in sorting solutions and so on. So that's the way we look at it. And then, you know, we select, and we've definitely, with the help also of Plug and Play, we work with multiple organizations. Just to give you a sense of the scale of the company in terms of project and what we're doing, we have right now more than 2,000 active projects in regards to implementation of what we will call our accelerated digitalization agenda, which are all these technologies within these 12 categories of activities. And these activities, they go from established companies to like the newest startups. So we work with companies, for example, like Rethink Robotics, or companies like Kindred, in some of the activities that we see a really strong need. And we work also with established companies, you know, maybe in more of the traditional conveying systems, companies like Dematic and the likes. I think one thing that is particularly exciting that we have announced just recently, and I think this is really valuable for everybody, especially working in this space, is we just launched a robotic hub, which is a solution that is built on Microsoft Azure. And we did a partnership with Six River Systems around their AGV solutions. And that robotic hub is basically an interface and a platform that allow us to integrate multiple technologies within the same technology ecosystem. Because one thing that we see is within a warehouse, whenever you talk about like Postal or any type of distribution activities, what happens is you have a huge amount of different technologies and vendors and partners that you have to integrate. And by building this robotic hub, we've been already able to reduce integration time by 60%. And we think we can actually increase that, you know, to 90%, so that whenever you have a complex ecosystems of different partners, you can actually bring them into action very quickly. So I think this is one of the big thing. And, you know, I think we are also working, you know, on the parcel delivery, on some of the delivery solutions with companies also that are within the Plug and Play ecosystem, like Far Eye, which are also some of our partners in you know, route optimization, and just to make sure that we can consistently improve our delivery experience for consumers. So I think, yeah, this would be a couple of the highlights, I guess, and happy to talk about this a bit further after in Q&A, or if someone has any comment.
Sounds great. Thanks, Nabil. And it's been an amazing partnership over the years with DHL. I think it's also inspiring to see the support across the whole organization. I remember a few years ago, the top 70 executives, including Charles, I believe, our keynote speaker back when he was at DHL, went to visit Plug and Play, and the whole organization, from their head of HR to the the CFO. I mean, they were all looking at startups and innovation and figuring out ways to get inspired. And it's been incredible, the investments you guys have made in robotics and automation over the years. And I'm sure it's paying off now, given the challenges in today's world. So yeah, please send questions to the panelists. We'll see how much time we have at the end and to answer additional questions. But let's move on to Swiss Post, who's also been a great long-term partner. And I know Matternet is a use case from one of our programs that has been a huge success for Swiss Post. But yeah, you guys are doing a lot, Andrea, and I know like you're doing a lot with intralogistics and the hospitals. Maybe you can share more about some of your automation opportunities and activities.
Yeah, that's correct. So maybe basically what I can tell is we have experienced exactly the same thing as Charles had in Canada. So Swiss Post on its own had an increase of around 30% in parcel delivery since COVID raised. And that's basically the core stuff which we are handling and have to do. And on the other hand, as you mentioned it, we are working with several autonomous delivery manufacturers. One of it is a manufacturer which builds hospital robots for intralogistics. So these robots can be utilized to transport basically everything you want within a hospital. That's about what it's medicine, it's blood samples, but it's also bigger stuff like meals for a whole station, recycling goods, really everything. And that's something we started with this program in 2017. First, of course, internally with a proof of concept, and have launched the first hospital or basically customer which is in production in 2019. And there you really can imagine that the robot is just wandering around in the hospital and transporting the stuff they want to have. And in March, April, when COVID peaked in Switzerland, we really saw that the need of such autonomous systems, when you aren't able to travel around that much and people don't want to leave the buildings or the rooms where they are in at the moment because of the fear of infection, we really had a huge boost in this technology, because every hospital, at least in Switzerland, understood that in midterm they will face this problem, because I'm not sure whether you are aware, but at least in Switzerland, COVID numbers are rising again pretty fast at the moment. So we will be again somewhere there where we had it in March and April. And everyone now is seeking to have the possibility to stay operational as much as possible, because the hospitals will get run over if we have those numbers increasing that much. So there we really felt the boost because of this situation. On the other hand, what we have seen, Swissbus is also the biggest public transport operator in Switzerland regarding buses. And there, of course, we had the other side. So usage of public transport just dropped down to 10% of what we had before of Corona. And there we really saw the difference, because, of course, we had to deal with having a huge fleet, which basically wasn't utilized anymore because no one traveled around. But those were kind of the both sides we had. It was very interesting, of course, for us, because for those autonomous systems, it really gave a push, as Nabil said, because it just made it clear that we have to have a solution short-term best, but mid-term we will have a solution, because people getting older and not that much workforce coming from the younger, because not that many people are there. So we will have to deal with that problem of just not having enough workers which are able to transport stuff in midterm.
Yeah, those are always great insights, Andrea, from you and the Swiss Post team. Yeah, it's always interesting to see what you guys are doing. You're definitely a leader when it comes to working with new technologies and startups. Ando-san, we'd love to move to you and Japan Post. I know you guys are looking a lot as well into robotics, automation in the last mile and different parts of the supply chain. So would love to hear kind of your insights and your perspective at Japan Post.
Yeah. So first, we've been focusing a lot on delivery bots and drone space. The part of the reason, as Andrea mentioned, is that there's a stretch for labor force, and other reason is that we have issues with package redelivery. So in the U.S., if e-commerce package, can go and leave at the front door of a house, but our customers doesn't want that. So we will have a redelivery if there's no one at home. So it's a lot of cost and resource commitments. So we start to think about implementing robots, and the pace for the implementation is, however, very slow. And part of the reason is regulation or the ordinance of the municipal or the national police. But there's a huge support from the government with past minister and the current prime minister. And so last week, we launched the first public road testing for the robot delivery. And so most likely we start to see more delivery bots on the public roads, hopefully like next year. So that's one very tangible efforts we've been making. And in terms of more intangible things, we actually studying a lot about the next generation infrastructures of the facilities or the network of the postal service. So if you go to the current postal service distribution center, maybe 1/3 or half of it is for like a traditional envelopes or the postal cards, but there's an increasing volume of e-commerce packages, and with more digitalization go on, there'll be less and less of the traditional mail. So we actually need to modernize the facility, and we have a robust plan to set up a new facility, and we are studying what kind of technology should be good in terms of like palletizing and things like that. So we've been having a quite good dialogues with the global robot companies like in the picking. I think today there's a presentation from like a Covariant and the One Robotics. But we are also interested in what's going on in China, and actually was through the program play. There's a company called Dorabot who's been very aggressive in those palletizing and picking stuff. So I would say under the COVID, it's difficult to conduct the robust POC, but anyhow, we have a bit of a procurement stretch because we are more than half owned by the government, and there's a WTO rule we have to comply for procurement. And the challenge for most of the government-owned postal service is that there's a procurement constraints, and it's not easy to bring Silicon Valley technology back to your home country. But together with Plug and Play and some of the IT service providers, we are trying various efforts in terms of pilots, and in the route optimization, we are launching a robust program already in Japan. Maybe with that, yeah, I'll go back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Ando-san. Yeah, always appreciate your insights, and exciting to see what you guys are doing. And one thing that always comes to my mind about robots and automation is the the need for safety in the supply chain, and the fact, like, we have other startups like Strong Arm Tech where you can have the device, and now they're being used in a lot of the distribution centers of Walmart. So people can stay 6 feet apart at all times. So that was able to limit cases for Walmart and some of their sites. But robots obviously don't transmit COVID like people do. So that's one of the other benefits. But let's maybe move on to the final words from Dr. Fadi. I know you have a big vision for innovation in Saudi Arabia, so would love to hear more from your insights as well.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks to my fellow colleagues on the panel. It was exciting to hear different stories and different initiatives. Unfortunately, a few minutes is not going to do justice to everything we've been doing. And I really want to take an opportunity, first and foremost, to thank my fellow colleagues, the 8,750 employees in the organizations for their efforts and their hard work over the past several months. On December 28th, 2018, so just about a year and 10 months ago, a new president was installed, His Excellency Engineer Anif Abanme. And since then, the organization has really been going through a huge, ambitious transformation strategy and plan. And we've been working tirelessly over the past several months at finalizing that strategy, that roadmap, and thankfully, thanks to everyone in the team, behind the scenes, and the executive leadership team, we're now at a stage where we're going to start embarking on the actual implementation, execution of that journey. That's going to take us about 3 to 5 years until we sort of see that final state of what we want to get to. That, needless to say, that does not mean that it's going to take 3 to 5 years to actually see the results of it. We're going to start to see a lot of that going on. But over the past 10 months, we've been really revisiting our entire roadmap and our strategy to become a much more customer-centric organization and to be a data-driven organization. And that really entails a lot of different elements. And I think when we talk about innovation, we're not purely just talking about the actual technology or digital innovation, but rather, innovation as a culture, innovation, our mindset, how we can sort of innovate our business models, the way we go about work, ultimately focusing on 2 main elements, which is reliability and speed. And that's what our customers really, really care about when we look at our core business. But we're also innovating out of our core business and looking at adjacencies. So what are we going to start looking at when it comes to financial services and other adjacent services and expanding into more of the logistics space. So our roadmap is very ambitious when we look at postal logistics, our CEP spaces, as well as some of the other adjacencies that I mentioned. But you mentioned COVID earlier, Mike, and I think COVID has really given us confidence and has allowed us to sort of build credibility and build our brand. Because the honest truth is our organization as it is today, and the infrastructure that we have today and the capability we have today was really built for the past sort of business of Post. And we're really undergoing a lot of change there and a lot of investments there. Hundreds of millions have been invested and will be invested over the next number of years. And it was really exciting to hear a lot of the startups and a lot of the other organizations presenting, their product lines and their service lines, because it only gets us thinking about, how can we actually leapfrog and get into there. But COVID told us 2 things. It told us that our strategy is absolutely on point, but it also enabled us to accelerate a lot of our strategy. So a year ago, if you asked us, what are you going to be doing in terms of expanding your service lines and looking at sort of pharma or the medical space, we would have said, yep, it's on our strategy. We're going to be doing it. But it's probably going to be about 2 years from now until we get into that space. Our role as the national champion within the country and the kingdom only told us that we had to focus and accelerate a lot of that growth and a lot of those service lines. So we quickly got in, assembled a war room and a team to start looking at pharma delivery and medication delivery, and how can we actually help the Ministry of Health within the kingdom? How can we help our customers and consumers across the kingdom to actually start to accelerate and deliver medications to our consumers and beneficiaries in a very, very quick manner. So we partnered with the Ministry of Health without even looking at it from a commercial perspective, but looking at our mandate and our public service mandate and our public service responsibility. And we did well there, and we delivered about 10,000 medications within a period of 2 months, where in reality, we didn't even have the infrastructure a few months before that. We didn't have the capability or the mindset or the processes or the technology to allow us to do that. But the burning platform forced us and said, let's go ahead and start doing this. And thankfully, we've been doing that at about 99.7% quality of service and reliability service. So once again, great effort there, great achievement, and a big thanks to everyone behind the scenes. We also had to play the role of ensuring that our beneficiaries, our residents, citizens of the country, due to the lockdown and not having access to food and deliveries and groceries, and the needy and the poor, and we played a vital role there across the kingdom. And once again, a big thanks to our volunteers, our employees, for really stepping it up. But that really, it also showed us the role of last mile, right? And the role of e-commerce, and what does that mean? So once again, very much aligned to our strategy, very much aligned to where we need to go. And as we speak today, we're in our final stages of designing our final blueprints for our new retail network, our new sortation operation centers, and we're going to be building state-of-the-art facilities in our main hubs, as well as regional facilities across the kingdom. Our last mile distribution centers as well, a huge investment there in terms of automation, in terms of equipment, in terms of capability. So we're doing a lot, Mike, and I can go on and on for hours, but I'm just mindful that we only have limited time. But there's really a lot. If I want to just focus in on the digital and technology space, something that we've done well in the past several years was parcel stations, and that's something we're going to be expanding upon. And we really look to hopefully see a lot of those across the nation with time, looking at drive-through PUDOs, so that we're accessible. As you know, we're a hot nation in terms of weather, and it's hard to always be out there and walk around, although that's changing as well with the major investments our country going through. So how do we look at the customer? How do we look at the behavior? How do we ensure that experience is at par, at global benchmarks and even beyond that? So today we're below that. Our ambition is not to get to the benchmark of global standards, but hopefully become the global benchmark for the region and other members of the global society to also follow and embark upon. But back to you, Mike, just mindful of the time.
Sounds great. Well, really appreciate your insights, Dr. Fadi, and it's very inspiring to see your support for innovation at the CEO level. I think a lot of your organizations, we've actually met at Plug and Play the CEOs of each one of these companies, and I feel like you have to have every part of the organization supporting this, from the business units to the executive leadership. So we appreciate your support for innovation. We also appreciate everything all the other panelists are doing. We're already over time. Unfortunately, it was a short panel today, but we do want to have future postal webinars. This is our second one this year. We have a ton of postal services around the world dialed in today, and at various levels, CEO level, innovation leaders from a variety of postal services are all dialed in today. And we want to continue this, and we want to be able to connect you guys globally to each other and encourage us to all innovate and be successful working with startups. So thank you all to the panelists again. I will pass it back to you, Cody.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to all the panelists. That was amazing. That actually concludes our event today, everyone. I'd like to issue one last thank you to all the speakers, the panelists, of course, the startups, and all of you in the audience. It was an absolute pleasure to hear all of your valuable insight. If you're interested in attending another event, we've got a couple others lined up on the next slide, as you see here. And if you're interested in getting more involved with Plug and Play, or if you have any questions, our door, of course, is always open. With that, I wish all of you a wonderful day.